In this video, I'm going to show you how to rank number 1 for the keyword gutter cleaning Sydney, and let's jump right into it. Alright, so jumping into SEMrush, I've plugged in our target keyword, which is gutter cleaning Sydney. We can see that it has around about 900 searches a month and a keyword difficulty score of 38%. Now, if we scroll down to the results section, basically what I'm going to be doing is selecting a random business to analyze. And I've gone into page 4 and selected this one called Gutter King Sydney. This is their website that we'll be working with. It looks like they offer a couple of different services around roof tile repairs, and gutter guard installation. For the purposes of this analysis, the main keyword I'm going to be focusing on is gutter cleaning services in Sydney. So usually what I like to do first is to run a full site crawl just so I can see what I'm working with. And we're going to be using a tool called Screaming Frog to run this crawl. Now, typically, if this was my client and I have access to all of their analytics tools, what I will be doing is connecting up these APIs with Google Analytics 4, Google Search Console, and PageSpeed Insights. Now, this gives us a much more holistic view as to the performance of each of the pages on the site. Now, because I don't have access to these, I won't be running these for this particular crawl, but usually you can get more data points if you have access to these analytics platforms as well. So I'm going to start the crawl, and then once it's completed, we'll jump into a Google Sheet. Okay, so once the site crawl is complete, you're going to want to export the data into a Google Sheet. I've just labeled this tab as crawl, and I've filtered to the indexable pages. Now, this is because for the purposes of a SEO analysis, we only want to focus on pages that are actually appearing in Google search results. And this page has around about 40 pages that are indexed. And I just want to highlight some of the things that I've noticed from the results of this crawl. So the first thing here is this pricing guide. Now, it's got the year 2024 in there, and this is problematic for obvious reasons. And usually it's not recommended to have the year within the URL because it will actually make it very difficult to update this blog post. If it has backlinks pointing to it and you update it for 2025, you'll then need to set up redirects, and it can get a little bit messy. So usually best practice would be to remove that year from the URL. So you would just have how much does gutter cleaning cost and then pricing guide. And this is also mentioned in the title of this page as well. So you can see here it says 2024 pricing guide. So this is definitely a page that can be updated for 2025, and not a lot of maybe has changed, but perhaps there's different guidelines or different sections of the content that could be updated to be more current. So that's a fairly straightforward fix to modify this content and update it for 2025 and update the title. And I'd also suggest just updating this URL structure so that the URL is not mentioned. Now, if we look at this content here, one of the things that sort of stands out immediately is that it's not actually specific to a location, which would be Sydney in this case. Now, that's actually a missed opportunity because pricing information can actually vary based on state or city. So it'd be a very good opportunity here to make this really specific to Sydney to improve their relevance to where they're operating, and also to include relevant information, maybe some laws around that, or specific pricing information that you can mention specifically for Sydney. So that's a small missed opportunity there that could be very easily improved. If we look at the heading structure, we can see that Sydney is actually not mentioned at all in any of the headings. So fairly straightforward fix, and there's a couple of things that they can do with this blog post to improve it. Now, going further down the page, this is something else I noticed, and it's fairly minor, but we can see that there's an uncategorized blog category, and essentially a lot of their content is appearing within this category. So this is something that can be updated to reflect the specific section of the content that they're focusing on here, and just make it a little bit more relevant, because this is a page that is being indexed, and that can improve its relevance according to whatever content they have published on there. So a couple of things there. Now, if we scroll further to the right here, there's a couple of things that I want to highlight. So first one is this homepage. If we go back to here, and go back to the homepage, we can see that they've actually mentioned gutter cleaning services on their homepage. It's mentioned in the title, Best Gutter Cleaning Services, as well as the first H2. It's actually missing a H1, so that's something else that they could resolve here. But because they have a separate page for gutter cleaning, this homepage should really not be optimized for gutter cleaning services, because as we scroll down, we can see that they mention all of the other cleaning services and repair services as well. So this page here would actually make more sense to optimize this for gutter cleaning Sydney. Again, it's missing any local relevance to Sydney. Now, they've obviously mentioned their name and linked back to the homepage, but from a local SEO perspective, there's really nothing on here that makes it hyper relevant to Sydney. So again, this is something that can be fairly easily fixed and fairly easily improved. And if we look through all of the headings here, there's just no mention of location. And then again, this would be a better page to optimize rather than the home page, which actually includes gutter cleaning services in the title and the heading. So that can be de-optimized and really just focus more on the brand, which is Gutter King Sydney. And then all of these service pages should be hyper specific to whatever keyword that is being targeted. Now, if we go back into this Google Sheet here, they look like they have a whole variety of local targeted pages. So you've got Blacktown, Schofields, Kellyville, Tingaby, and Box Hill, and so on. They've got quite a few more. What stands out to me here, firstly, is the titles. So they're essentially using the same template across all of these local pages and just renaming the city to be specific to whatever the page is targeting. And then all of these meta descriptions for each of these local pages is actually duplicated. So basically, it's the same meta description, different cities. There's nothing unique about any of the meta descriptions, nothing unique about the titles. And that's not as much of an issue as much as the meta description and then the content itself, which is the most important part of building local pages. If we have a look at Blacktown and then compare it to Schofields, we can see he says exceptional gutter cleaning in Schofields, exceptional gutter cleaning services in Blacktown. Minor difference, but really it's very similar content. And then this spiel here is basically the same, again, just with the city renamed. And this is a very common occurrence in a lot of gutter cleaning service sites with local target pages. It's just a very cookie cutter content approach. And it actually does not work well, because if we look at their page here, and we look at their ranking pages, go back to domain overview, and it'll be interesting to see if any of their local pages are actually ranking, because my suspicion would be because they are basically a templated approach and they have the same content, then most likely won't actually be ranking well on Google anyway. So if we have a search for Blacktown, so we can see here they rank 18th. And then the other one looking at Schofields, which doesn't appear at all. So clearly this approach does not actually work in terms of local SEO. Google has gotten smarter and are very good at analyzing the content on the page and determining intent and the relevance of the content. So what we see here is basically the same content, same layout, just with the services renamed to include the city. But all of the content is the same. So there's a real missed opportunity here. Each of these location-specific pages should actually be hyper-specific to that location. They need to be optimized to be hyper-relevant, so the content actually needs to match specifics around that smaller city that they're targeting. And now there's also an issue with renaming your services to include the suburb, because when you actually click onto the service, it redirects back to the main gutter cleaning page anyway. So by having these internal links to be including a city name pointing to the main service page is actually very confusing and makes for a very messy site architecture. And this is something that actually should be cleaned up, because it'll make it very, very difficult to be able to rank each of these location specific pages if we have these internal links pointing to all of these different pages for all of the services. So yeah, it is quite messy, and there's a lot of work to be done to improve each of these local pages. And the other thing is they're all missing H1 tags. So if we have a look in here, there's no H1 here in the Schofields, and then similarly, there'll be none in Blacktown either, just because they seem to have duplicated the same pages, so they'll have the same SEO issues across them. And these are very simple changes that could actually significantly improve the performance just by making these pages unique, adding in really relevant H1 tags, and then some of these titles could be a little bit more specific as well. And then obviously the meta descriptions need to be unique, rather than just changing the city names. They should really be relevant to the city. And then, like I mentioned, H1 tags are missing across a lot of different pages. So that's the location targeted pages. The other thing I want to mention here is the blog content. So we can see that there's quite a few assets created around gutter cleaning and gutter repair. So if we scroll over to the titles, there's quite a few assets around gutter cleaning, gutter blockages, the time it takes to clean gutters. And on the face of it, it looks quite good. They have covered quite a variety of different topics. Now, the issue is when we look into each of these blog posts, they have a couple of issues actually. So the first one here is the author page. So this actually needs to be an actual person's name. Again, a missed opportunity, because you can build more credibility at the local level if you have someone who is a subject matter expert, usually someone from within the business that should be writing or at least proofreading this content. So that can be changed to an actual person. We've spoken about the categories. It needs to be more specific. And then the content itself, when you look at it, immediately what stands out is, again, there's no locations mentioned. And when you're trying to rank at the local level, relevance is really what comes into play, aside from all the other stuff that we've spoken about, but building hyper-specific content for each location, and making sure that the content actually speaks to those cities is very important. And the other thing here is that there's really no internal links that I can see pointing to any of the other blog posts or any of the relevant service pages. This is actually a great opportunity to build specific content for each city and then internally link it to each of the city pages, just to improve topical relevance, but also to improve relevant content pointing to each city. And then essentially, when you look at a lot of these content, you start to get a feel for the writing style, and it really does come across as AI content in many ways, just by looking at the title alone. If we go over into this sheet, we can see that a lot of them are ultimate guides, essential guide, very, very similar titles, and the way the content reads is very much AI driven. So unfortunately, this approach actually doesn't work super well. It is very easy to generate AI content around a variety of topics, and the topics themselves are good. There's no real problem with the topics. The two issues are, obviously, they're not specific to locations, because there are some topics like pricing that are actually different across cities and states. So it can make a difference, and you can have unique content across those topics. Even seasonality comes into play with some cities and states. So you can kind of find angles that you can really create unique content that can be different for different cities. And the second thing is just the content itself. It does need to be high quality. It needs to actually have been proofread at the very least by an editor, and improved upon if these are generated with AI. But the way it currently reads is very similar across all of the pages, all the blog pages, I should say. And really, when we look at the rankings, I would suspect that very few, if any, of these are actually ranking. So we can see this gutter cleaning cost, which we've spoken about, actually does rank somewhere near the top page. The highest we can see is position 10. But then as we scroll down, that's really the only blog post that we can see that is driving traffic. And if we have a look at this one, this is actually one of the few blog posts, and this has actually been written purposely for this particular keyword and actually adds a lot of value. Only thing I would suggest here is that it is missing location specific information, and it's also got the year in the title and the URL, which makes it look a little bit dated. But aside from that, you can see that this page is actually ranking reasonably well, and it is different to the other content that we saw, which seems to be very much generated and has a lot of similarity between all of the different blog posts. So immediately we can see that that page is performing a lot better. But in terms of all the other blog posts, we really don't see any of them ranking. So if they're not driving any traffic and they're not really bringing any value in terms of backlinks or authority to the site, I would even consider potentially removing some of these blog posts, especially the ones where there's a lot of overlap, because I can see there's quite a few just around gutter cleaning, which probably have quite similar content across these blog posts. So these can be, ideally they can actually be removed and then rewritten specifically for certain locations. So you could have Sydney and then you can break it out by suburbs. So the next thing I want to focus on is the site architecture. And I've started building out the sitemap for this particular website. Now, what you'll see here is on the left, we've got the target keyword, which is obviously gutter cleaning Sydney. The search intent, which for the purposes of local SEO, we're going to focus purely on commercial intent and informational intent. Now, commercial is obviously just anyone searching for the service, which in this case would be gutter cleaning services. And then informational is further up the funnel, so they may be seeking a little bit more information before they decide to work with a gutter cleaning company. And then the URL is the URL structure that I would propose. And then over to the right here, you also see a title and H1 column, which I'll touch on in a moment. So with this first one here, gutter cleaning Sydney, this is the existing URL, and we touched on this before, but it's actually missing the name of the city within the URL structure. And the way I always like to explain it is if you remove the main domain and you only look at the URL slug, it should very clearly tell you what that page is about. Now, if you look at this one, it just says gutter cleaning. It doesn't actually tell us that they operate in Sydney or any other suburb. So it's not quite clear enough, and it's not quite relevant enough for the keyword that they actually want to target, which is gutter cleaning Sydney. So quite a simple change here. I would just simply plug in the city. So gutter cleaning Sydney. Now, if we scroll over to the right, the current title for this page is number 1, best gutter cleaning, gutter king Sydney. Now, just simplify this a little bit more based on what I've seen is actually ranking well in Sydney, and just model it based on what the titles they have, which would be gutter cleaning and then Sydney, New South Wales. And then the same across all of the other suburbs that we want to target. We'll use a very similar title structure. And then the H1 is just a little bit more simpler because it should be a little bit more readable than the title. Now, keep in mind the title is actually what is in the SERPs, and then the H1 tag is actually what people see. So if we come over to the site here, this would actually be what the user sees. So it's important for the H1 tag to be quite clear. Now, in this case, the current page actually is missing that H1 tag, which means that it hasn't been tagged correctly. And that's a very simple fix, but it's actually a very impactful fix because H1s are very important from an SEO standpoint. So we would simply add in gutter cleaning in city or suburb, and then we'll replicate that across all of these pages here. Now, over to the left here, if we look at the commercial intent keywords, I've simply focused on the ones that are currently existing on the website, but there actually are other suburbs that I'm sure that this particular company is servicing. So this could be built out a lot more for suburbs that do have decent search volume. And again, whilst we are keeping a very similar title and H1 structure for each of the cities, we will actually want to make sure that each of these pages is hyper specific to each city and suburb that we want to rank for, rather than duplicating the content across all of the pages. So that's the commercial intent keywords, and that's really what we want to focus on the most from a local SEO perspective. The second piece of this is the informational content, and really the purpose of this content is to support the commercial intent keywords that we want to target and to build topical relevance so that Google sees us as an authority and as a relevant business within each of the city and suburbs that we want to rank for. Now, basically what I've done to come up with some of these ideas is gone into SEMrush and search broadly for gutter cleaning. And I've just looked at the different content ideas that come up with that actually have decent volume. And then I've gone into ChatGPT to actually give it a bit more relevance to Sydney and some of the other suburbs where it's relevant. So we don't want to just keyword stuff the city if it's not a topic that actually has any variability to it based on the location. So you'll see here the ideas I'm suggesting are actually specific to cities and they actually can change. So for example, the cost of gutter cleaning in Sydney could be different to the cost of gutter cleaning in Perth or Melbourne, for example. How often to clean gutters in Sydney could be affected by the weather or seasonality. Are tenants responsible for cleaning gutters? This could come down to the legislations in Sydney versus other cities. The best time to clean gutters, again, could be impacted by the climate. So we really want to focus on topics that actually have variability based on its location, and that we're not just focusing on broad topics that could be replicated across any city, because really there's no need to be creating content that applies across Australia if you don't service those locations. So these are some of the specific content ideas that would actually support these keywords, and particularly the gutter cleaning Sydney, which is the main city that we want to focus on. And the URL structure is very similar. We'll basically have something near the target keyword after the URL slug. Again, we want to make sure the location is in there where it's relevant. And then the title, we'll keep it simple, just based on the topics that we've come up with. Should be fairly straightforward. Now, the other side of this is the content marketing piece. So we want to create content that is relevant to all of the other suburbs that we want to target, as well as Sydney. And this can be a little bit tricky because a lot of suburbs in Sydney, they're not going to be as impacted by prices or climate. There's not a lot of variability. Some of them do have different localized issues, but for the most part, it can be a little bit tricky to come up with unique content. And that's where you can actually use AI to really help you with brainstorming ideas. And I just come up with 3 here. And again, just using SEMrush to come up with different angles and then feeding in the right information into AI so that you can come up with some ideas and then also just manually analyze some of these suggestions that AI comes up with and make sure that it is relevant. So for example, here, I've come up with one called "We Cleaned 50 Sydney Home Gutters. Here's what we found." Pretty simple, but it is specific to Sydney, so it could contain information that you'd really only find within Sydney suburbs. What happens if you don't clean your gutters in Sydney? Again, based on location, this could vary. And then Sydney suburbs most at risk for gutter blockages. Now, what you see here is that all of these titles here would be very easy to incorporate all of the other locations and suburbs that you want to target. So you could have internal links pointing to each of these suburbs, particularly with this last one, where we're basically listing suburbs that are at risk for gutter blockages for various reasons. It'd be a very easy way to pass on page rank from these blog posts along to these suburb targeted pages. Once you've optimized your sitemap, the next step would be to start optimizing the on-page content for each of your site pages. And again, we're going to start with the commercial intent keywords because these will move the needle the most in terms of your local SEO rankings. And starting with gutter cleaning Sydney, I'm going to take a look at the existing content that is on this page. So the tool I'm going to use is Surfer SEO, but there's quite a few content optimization tools that you can take advantage of. And basically what we want to see here is work out how well optimized the content is for that keyword gutter cleaning Sydney. Now, what I want to focus on the most is this section here. So these are the NLP keywords, and Surfer basically analyzes how often these are mentioned and also how much content there is around each of these different categories and sections that it's come up with based on the top 10 ranking results for this keyword. Now, what I want to emphasize here is that the point is not to basically stuff these keywords into the content. The point is to look at these NLP keywords and work out where the gaps are in the content and where there's opportunities to expand certain sections or to modify certain sections to cover more of these topics that we know the top ranking results are including in their content. And this is really helpful because the NLP keywords are actually what helps Google be able to understand what the context of your page is and what the content on there is actually talking about. So it's very, very important to ensure that we have as much NLP optimization as possible. And again, we're not just going to be stuffing these keywords in. We really want to add value to each of these categories. And some of them may be more relevant than others. And typically the way these are suggested is the more relevant ones are at the top, and as you go further down the list, you'll notice they become quite broad and quite a bit less relevant. So it's a really nuanced approach that we want to use. And in this case, there's some really simple optimizations we can make to get a nice boost on this score. So we've touched on this before, but even the first title, which really should be the H1, and it's listed as a H2. So this is something that's technical that can be fixed up. Now, if we change this to a H1 in Surfer and we add in the location, Gutter Cleaning Sydney, we see here that it gave us a really nice boost in the optimization score just from adding in the city. Now, I'm not suggesting that we want to fixate on this score because it really is an arbitrary number, but the context and relevance is really what matters here. And from a local SEO perspective, I really can't state the importance of building topically relevant content for each of the pages that's specific to the location that we want to focus on. So quite a few improvements that can be made here. Now you can do this process manually, which is usually what I recommend. And if you do want ideas on how to expand your expand your page around some of these more granular topics, you can actually take advantage of AI as well. And I'm going to show you a quick example. So if you jump into ChatGPT here, basically what I've done is I've inputted the about page for Gutter King. So if we have a look here, it's just got information on the business itself. And this is a very, very important step if you are going to use AI to help you come up with content. And again, I don't recommend that you just use AI content, but it will give you a nice foundation to build on. But this will allow ChatGPT to really come up with personalized content that will really give you an edge against all of the other sites that are just using generic gutter cleaning content. So a really nice, simple way to add personalization to your output, include the about page section or any other information that you know that can be relevant to the content for gutter cleaning services in particular. And then all I've done is copied all of these NLP keywords and given it to ChatGPT and said, can you create an outline for this keyword, Gutter Cleaning Sydney, and include these NLP keywords? And we had a really nice, relevant, and more importantly, personalized outline that we can use. And then I've gone ahead and asked it to actually generate the first draft for this content. And I've plugged this back into Surfer. And this is really only the first draft, so we actually haven't optimized this or personalized it further. And we can see the score is already bumped up to nearly 70 compared to here where sitting at a 36. And again, this is really just the first draft with very minimal input. The next step here would be for the editorial team to actually have a look at this, further personalize it, add more value to the content wherever possible, and really reword a lot of it that would actually be personalized to the business. But a really great way to come up with a solid foundation. And what you'll notice here is that the reason why the score has gone up is because a lot of the content has been written specifically for Sydney and surrounding suburbs. So it's just a lot more relevant from a local perspective. Even the FAQs are specific to Sydney. And that's what matters. Relevance to the location you want to target. That's what you want to focus on. But make it natural. You don't want to just be stuffing the location into places where it doesn't make sense. It does have to have variability according to the city. This is a great way to come up with a first draft. And then have your content team improve it and really build out a solid asset that you can upload to your gutter cleaning services page. Now, this will be the same process for all of these suburb pages. So you've got Blacktown, Schofields, Kellyville, Box Hill, and Castle Hill. Same process. We want to focus on this target keyword. Now, if we jump into Surfer, I've just used Blacktown as an example. We can see that it's come up with NLP keywords that are specific to Blacktown. So we see some surrounding suburbs and just a couple of other terms that are specific to the council that falls into it. So again, you can write this manually, or you can use ChatGPT to give you a foundation to build out a really locally relevant page. And then this can be repeated across all of these pages. The next piece to achieving solid SEO rankings is your site authority. And whilst you can get everything right, you can have the most optimized content, you can have a really well optimized sitemap, but if your site doesn't have enough site authority in comparison to the sites that are actually ranking in the top 3 positions, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to actually improve your local SEO rankings. Now, the first thing you want to do is have a look at your site's authority as it stands today. So, for example, with this particular site, Gutter King Sydney, when we have a look at their site authority, there really isn't much to speak of. They've got about 25 referring domains and 92 backlinks. And when we have a look at these referring domains, we see a couple of them that appear to be decent links. There's quite a few in here that are actually not from Australia, and certainly not from the cities and suburbs that they want to target. So there's quite a few low quality links, and overall their site authority is quite low. So one of the first things you can do, and this is the easiest way to start with your link building strategy, is to look at the competitors and to do a gap analysis of what links they have that your site doesn't have. So in SEMrush, you can simply just grab the top ranking results for your target keyword, which in this case would be Gutter Cleaning Sydney. And all I've done is plugged in these 3 other sites that I saw had solid site authority. And then this is our domain. So we can see all of the backlinks that they have that we don't have. And I want to emphasize here that you really want to use a nuanced approach because no matter how well these other competitors have built their link profile, there will be no doubt that there's going to be low quality links. There's going to be links that really won't have much of an impact for your business. So really use a nuanced approach and manually analyze the links to see whether they actually are worth going after. And just at a quick glance here, we can see a lot of low quality links like these Web 2.0s. We can see some of these really low authority sites that are either just scraped links or just really low quality links that you don't really want to be replicating. So use a nuanced approach, but no doubt you can pick up some valuable opportunities here. And SEMrush does do a decent job at categorizing which ones the best links are for you to target. But really, you'd have to do a manual analysis to come up with link opportunities with this approach. Now, the next thing I would suggest is to actually start with a foundational link building campaign, particularly if your site doesn't actually have existing authority. And the best way to do this is to build local citations, and you can use services like Loganics. There's quite a few out there. This is just the one that I prefer to build local citations for you. And really these are foundational links. They'll have mentions of your business name, your phone number, and your address across relevant authoritative sites and directories within your target cities and target countries. And it just helps to give your site a nice little boost and a foundation to work off. So I would recommend building at least 100 to 150 of these local citations to begin with. And it is a very, very manual process. So using these sort of services will make it a lot easier. But keep in mind that local citations on their own won't really do much to move the needle in terms of your rankings. But it is an important step to be able to establish credibility for your site because you will get listed on some high authority sites and really relevant directories that can help to give it a nice little push. And then once we have built that foundation, the next thing I would really suggest is to look at the local level to see where you can get your site placed. And one strategy that I always employ with gutter cleaning services is sponsorships. So if you do a Google search for sponsors plus Sydney or whatever city or state you're in, you can actually find opportunities to get backlinks from some really solid sites. And what you want to look for is examples like this one here, where they have a sponsorship page and that they actually link out to the logos. Because in often cases, the sponsors page might have logos or mentions of other business names, but they don't actually contain a link. So you want to find examples like this where there actually are external links going to each of these sites. And this is a really great way to start building links at the local level. So like I mentioned, you can get started with Sydney, find opportunities like this one, and basically just reach out and ask what their requirements are in terms of sponsorship, so what the investment requirement is, and then basically just ask what's required to get listed on their sponsorship page. So it's pretty simple. It is a scale game, so you would need to reach out to quite a few of them, but start building a list that is relevant, and you can start to build some really nice links at the city level. And then if we dive back into here, we can actually do this same approach for some of the specific suburbs as well. So same thing here, we can do sponsors Blacktown, and we can find opportunities. We immediately see where the Blacktown City cons come up, and then specific clubs and businesses that you could potentially get listed on. And you can repeat this for as many suburbs as you like. And this is often actually an untapped opportunity, because a lot of businesses believe that there aren't opportunities at the suburb level. But like I showed you, there's always opportunities for pretty much every suburb in Sydney, particularly the ones that are hubs. So definitely tap into that. It's a great way to start building links and to improve your site authority. And then the last thing I would suggest is, if you look at the site architecture, once you start building out these content assets, it's actually a great way to distribute site authority across to your gutter cleaning pages. So depending on how well your content is produced, you may find that you can actually start acquiring natural backlinks, so other sites that are relevant to the home services industries can actually start linking out to your blog posts, particularly the ones that are just editorial in nature. Obviously, competing businesses wouldn't be linking to your blog posts, but there's certainly opportunities there where there's other sites that only focus on informational content. So if you can build good quality content, you can start to acquire some natural backlinks. And then lastly, with these location specific pages, when you do build backlinks, you want to make sure that they're pointing to the URL that is hyper specific to that suburb. So for example, if you were to build links at the Blacktown suburb, you'd want to make sure that those backlinks are pointing to gutter cleaning Blacktown, and that will just give you a nice boost in topical authority and relevance at the local level for each of your target cities and suburbs. The final piece of this local SEO puzzle is your local map pack rankings. And we're going to look at the keyword gutter cleaning Sydney. And looking at these top competitors, we can see that the ones that are really consistently appearing at the top have very solid review counts. Now, this is one of the most fundamental areas that you want to focus on when it comes to map rankings, because this is really how you can influence how high you rank. There's obviously other factors to it, but you can get everything else right. But if your review count is not as high as the top ranking competitors, it will be very difficult for you to break into those top 3 positions, where it typically cuts off in the organic rankings. So when we look at these top ranking results, we can see that they have very, very high review counts, particularly this one, Pure Gutters. They're absolutely crushing it with their ranking, and we can see they've got over 300 reviews. This one has over 100, and then we can see some of these here also close to 100. This one has 300. And so what you want to start doing is to work out what that average review count is. And obviously you can use tools like SEMrush to give you those numbers. You can also just manually do it just by looking at the top ranking results. So for example, if you look at these top 3 and you work out that the average review count is about 250, you generally want to aim for a little bit higher than that, because your end goal should be to exceed the number of reviews that the top ranking results have. That's the best way that you can not only break into those top results, but also maintain your rankings. And in this case, when you look at Gutter King Sydney, which is a business site we're looking at, they've got 34 reviews here. As we saw, the top ranking results have hundreds of reviews. But the good news here is that we can see some of these other businesses with quite a bit less than this particular site. We can see this one has 58, this one has 19. There's a couple here that are 30, this one's 10. So like I said, reviews is not the only metric that matters, but when you look at the top ranking results, you'll consistently see businesses that do drive high quality reviews and actually have a high volume of those reviews. So highly recommend just working out what that average is and trying to exceed that average count to be able to move into those top rankings. Now, with Gutter King, one thing I want to point out here is that they've actually got 2 business listings. And when it comes to gutter cleaning services, you don't actually need to list a location for your business because it falls into a service area business. So we can see here with this listing, it says serves Tallawong and nearby areas. And then you've got Gutter King Sydney again, which serves Castle Hill and nearby areas. And they're both very, very close together. So this is actually a huge mistake because when you combine these reviews, you actually get up to somewhere around 55 reviews in total. So diluting it out across 2 business profiles in this industry actually does not make sense. So really they should be consolidating these into one and then focusing on optimizing their Google business listing and acquiring reviews to one listing. And that will be really impactful in terms of appearing in here, because when you look at Gutter Cleaning Sydney, they are all the way down here, which is one of their listings, which the one has 34. Now, if you were to add 19 to that, there's a very good chance they would actually be ranking higher if they consolidated these rankings. So they sit towards the bottom of the map pack. And again, when you look at organic listings, this will get cut off after the top 3. So that's really where you want to focus on being. Okay, so that is how I would approach a local SEO campaign for a gutter cleaning company. And if you found this useful, please give this video a like as it will help to grow the channel. And if you do own a gutter cleaning or gutter services business, please feel free to reach out. I'll be more than happy to do an audit for your website. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.